straight from the mayor's mouth, with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Hello everyone and welcome to Straight from the Mayor's Mouth. Hello there, Matt. Are you surviving this cold little blast we sort of everybody in Dubbo seems to be getting through right now?
Last week was a bit chilly, wasn't it? And
Wasn't
I
it just?
talked about it when I'd been in Canberra for a few days a couple of weeks ago. That was cold over there, but I think this is just about as cold here. In fact, I'm sure one of the days during the week I heard something on the radio that said it was the coldest day for 26 years in Dubbo.
Right?
Yes.
Is that right?
So,
Wow.
Yeah, it was the coldest maximum
Yeah.
temperature. So that's
would
cold.
not put it past it, I tell you. There's some of those days. I think my fire has been going literally 24/7 for about the last week. It's fortunately
You're
I've been
causing
off it.
climate change. You're by yourself.
I know. I was a little bit thinking, should I say this to you or not? But at least we're warm in our house, I tell you. But yeah,
Who cares about the rest of the planet?
Exactly right. That's all secondary. Very
But
good.
But it has been a bit chilly, and one of the stories we may even talk about today involves some of the consequences of that cold being
Yes,
fog. That
yes.
does have a bit of an impact on...
It just make me feel guilty now of the fact that I got that fire going through.
Well, I'm not sure if you're contributing to fog. It might be smog.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, exactly. All right, buddy, let's just jump straight into it. Look, we talked very, very briefly about this at the end of our last podcast there last week about during the week, it seems as though the fact that we had a minister or two that popped into Dubbo and to Wellington, and it certainly seemed to be the case last Monday morning. Did you happen to catch up with a certain minister or two?
Well, it ended up being a minister or one.
Oh, just one?
Because of fog.
Here we go. This is the fog story straight up.
This is the fog
So we're
story.
straight into it. I love it.
That's right.
Yes, yeah.
So we did certainly have two ministers coming along last week. We had Penny Sharpe, the Minister for Climate Change, Minister for Energy, Minister for the Environment, Minister for Heritage. And so she was coming along to make an important announcement, but also it was going to involve Paul Scully, the Minister for Planning. And the initial proposal was that they were flying in on the 9:45 a.m. flight. I think they were both landing on that initially. And then we're going to do a media release down, or they were going to do a presser, in Budengra area, somewhere around there, around renewables, and then go into Wellington for a luncheon. And then Paul Scully had to come back, and I think his flight back was around 2 p.m-ish, and then Penny Sharpe was about 5:30 p.m. And I got a text from Penny Sharpe's advisor on the Sunday night, around 10:30 p.m, might have even been 11 p.m, around that sort of time frame, said, Matt, we just got notified that our flight had been cancelled.
Cancelled?
Now, I'm pretty certain what happens with airlines when there is fog here. Let's say, for example, you've got a plane, and I won't mention any companies here, any of the airlines that we fly on. Look like I'm having a go at any airlines, but
let the listeners sort of fill in the blanks. So
that's right. Let's say you've got an airline that's got the plane in Dubbo, and the 6:30 a.m. flight is leaving Dubbo. So it flies down to Sydney, and then people get on that plane and they fly back from Sydney to Dubbo, and basically does that throughout the day.
Yep.
I don't know the exact logistics of the airlines, but I imagine pretty much that they'd probably use the same plane going back and forth. It kind of makes sense. They'd change crew at some point during the day probably. So I think what they do is when there's fog, when they know there's going to be fog, for example, rather than delay that flight, which then delays the flight coming back from Sydney, which then delays it. So throughout the whole day, you're annoying everyone.
Sort of playing catch up for the rest of the afternoon.
Yeah, you would be. And you're annoying everyone a bit for the entire day. I think the airlines make the decision to cancel the first two flights and then almost start again where they say, right, that flight that was going to go from 6:30 down to Sydney and then come back and get back here and say at 9:45 and then go again at the next flight at say 10:20, I think they just say, we'll just start the day at 10:20 because we know we're not going to get away early.
Oh, right.
So they cancelled. So I got the message to say the flight that was coming back from that flight that was leaving Dubbo has been cancelled. So they are scrambling around for another flight. Now, you can imagine you've got people lined up for a presser, you've got people lined up for a luncheon.
Absolutely.
Maybe 50 or 60 people lined up for the luncheon.
The roll-on effect, so to speak.
The roll-on effect. So I got the message and they said, we've managed to get on another flight that'll get there at 9:20. So it's going to be earlier. Oh, fantastic. So everything was arranged. Everything was under control. Business as usual. And then another text came the next morning. Well, that 9:20 flight's been pushed back a bit. And then we were actually...
laid plans. There
that's
they are.
right. We were helping them out in terms of doing some of the organisation of some of the things here in Budengra, Wellington, etc. So then it was changed to a presser in Dubbo rather than getting down to try and get out to Badangra and then back into Wellington.
Wow.
Then it was changed to let's have the luncheon in Dubbo, but hold on, all these people are lined up to have it in Wellington. Okay, let's change it back to Wellington because...
Oh, the poor organisers.
That's right.
I'm really feeling for them right now. Oh, my God.
You don't know what's going to happen there. At some stage during the morning, I can't remember exactly when, we got the message to say, well, Paul Scully's not coming now because he would come down, fly down to Dubbo, and then almost be here for half an hour maybe and then get on the next flight and fly back because he had engagements during the afternoon. So we lost Paul Scully along the way. Penny Sharpe still came. Penny Sharpe's advisors still came. So they ended up turning up at about, I'm trying to remember exactly what time it was. It was probably around 12:40 or thereabouts. So flew in, went to the Energy Co office in Dubbo, made the announcement, and I'll get to the announcement in a moment because that was the exciting part.
That's the whole reason for it, yeah.
Correct. And then they went to Wellington, had the luncheon with various people in Wellington, got back, got on the 5:30 flight, and out they went. So the important part out of all of that, well, we were certainly very helpful as a council.
There's actually a moral to the story with that is in winter, don't book the 6:30 flight, I'd suggest. So go a little bit later than what sounds like probably a safe way at least. At least you'll know then in that case if we are sort of set back, we should get a seat on a plane.
Well, the funny part is that I did have a couple of people say, oh, didn't someone tell them it's fog season? They should know that.
It's fog season.
And certainly it's nice in hindsight to be able to say, yes, that was obvious that was going to happen. If you did have something, even going to Sydney for some important event where you had to get a connecting flight or you had to be in Sydney for something important, then I'd probably go the night before and vice versa. If someone was coming from Sydney and it had to be something early the next morning, I'd probably say just go the night before because it's probably going to be a little bit safer for you.
That sounds like good advice, actually.
It does, doesn't it? So why was Penny here? And I've always got the doors wide open, arms open for Penny because Penny is very important in our res. We keep talking about our res and how important that is for our future. And it's fantastic. I get on very well with Penny. She sends me text messages from time to time just telling me about things that are happening and updates. Getting text directly from a minister and being able to text back directly to a minister is always nice. You to have that relationship there.
Well, to have both her and Paul Scully, I know Paul Scully never made it in the end yet to sort of go, or never got here in the first place, but the plan to have both of them out here, obviously this is a significant announcement they're going to make. Exactly
right. And the announcement is going to go across 4 different LGAs. So Mid-Western Regional Council, or Mudgee it's normally called, Warrumbungle Shire Council, most people call it Coonabarabran, and of course Upper Hunter. This announcement is going to affect all 4. So they could have chosen any one of those 4 LGAs to make the announcement. In the end, they chose Dubbo. I can't tell you exactly why, that's their decision, but I hope it's because they've always had a good positive relationship with Dubbo. I hope that was part of it. So we've talked before about the fact that we've got $128.4 million that's been announced previously as part of the money that will come from Energy Co to those 4 LGAs. Now, this is part of the money from the transmission line. So you remember that Energy Co are tasked with the job of connecting the various renewable energy projects back to the grid. They'll be building transmission lines, well, they won't be. We know now they've given the contract to AceRes, but essentially they're responsible for it. And once they're connected, those proponents will have to pay a sum of money, an ongoing sum of money that's a small percentage, I would imagine, of what they're transmitting, some sort of calculation they've got there. And that money is to be used for communities along the way, along those transmission lines. Okay. But it's a number of years before that will start. So the Minister made the announcement previously to say, more or less as a upfront payment to be repaid by those ongoing payments, $128.4 million. So that was fantastic.
That's a significant figure, isn't it? Like that's not sort of figure sort of just turn your nose up at. That's a significant figure.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
So with that $128 million, do we get that? Well, obviously it's split 4 ways, but do we get this to sort of do whatever we want with it?
Well, this is the part of the announcement. So when they came along, or when Penny came along to make the announcement, essentially this is the first part of this. Now, the $128 million will be over a number of years. So I think it's about 4 years that'll be over until we start to get money flowing through the transmission lines. But they always said that they would load up the front of it. So they wouldn't just split it 4 ways and say over the next 4 years. It was always going to be loaded up. So that was part of the reason to come out to say
so
how
our
much.
share is what, about $32 million? Is that my maths right?
Over the time frame, then that's exactly right. You would imagine it'll be about $32.1 million that we will get, but I don't know that they'll do it exactly like that. But yes, approximately, so not too bad.
That's not good. Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, absolutely.
But this announcement was around the first part of it, which was $70 million. So of the $128 million, then $70 million was announced there.
Okay.
And the way that will be broken up is local community small grants. So they've got 500,000 of the 70 million for small scale projects that deliver tangible benefits for local communities. I'm reading from the media release now, from the government release. So applicants individually can apply for up to $50,000.
Can that money, that $500,000, we talked about the community benefit funds that council gives out from the point of view of when a small little group wants to apply for a funding, we talked about the funding arranged there last podcast or podcast before. Can this money go towards that, or has this got to be a separate pool again?
This is a separate pool, but the pool that we're talking about here is individual organisations, individual community organisations, I would imagine.
So the same type of people who apply for those other community grants can apply for this as well?
That's right. Now, I haven't looked at all the individual conditions yet, but that's my understanding is that they would be a community group and they say we can apply for that and up to $50,000, so they can do that. And I remember being in one of the sessions, one of the planning sessions with EnergyCo, getting feedback from the community. And my feedback was, I want to make sure that you're not just handing out $500, $200, small amounts, make it a bit more substantial because we want it to make a difference.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't have a minimum amount there, but the fact that it can be up to $50,000 tends to suggest they're asking organisations to think a bit bigger, to think about things that can make a bit more of a difference.
So this $500,000, and is this a figure that we're going to get every year for the next, say, 4 years?
No, this is... So keep in mind that 128 million, this is the first 70 million of that. So we're using up more than half straight away of the 128 million in the first round.
Yeah, right.
So again, loading up the front end, if you like, if you want to put it that way.
But there will be another announcement, this sort of figure, something similar again down the track?
You would imagine that with another 58 million left, then there might be an announcement after this one that might be a smaller amount. They might spread it out over the next few years, for example. I can't tell you exactly what the government's going to do, but they might spread it out. So it might be, okay, next year there's 200,000, the year after 200,000, the year after 100,000, or along those lines.
Yep.
So basically any groups, any small organisations out there, any community organisations, go and have a look on the EnergyCo website to see the exact information.
Is this money available when?
So I don't have the closing date, but we're talking short term. So we're talking probably closing date maybe around September, October. Go and have a look on that website.
Yeah, right. So you can actually already apply to start to access some of these funds.
Essentially, the information on that's all on the website now. So whether you can apply right now or whether it's imminent, but the information is all there.
Does council make the decision in regards to where the money goes? Or
No,
go
this
back to
this one's not us. This one's just the state government.
A state government, sorry. Yep.
So let me get to the other ones as well. First Nations Fund, they've put, of that 70 million, they've put 10 million for projects that empower local Aboriginal organisations, create employment and participation opportunities, and enhance outcomes for Aboriginal people. You can apply in that one for up to $1 million.
Yeah, wow.
So my understanding of that one would be you've got to be an Aboriginal organisation, which there are many out there.
But this $10 million, this is just within our region, isn't it?
This is just this res.
This is
not
just
just Aboriginal Council.
Right.
The 4 councils across the res.
Okay, yep. So that's what you're competing against. If
so
you're
if you
in
put an application in, you could be competing against someone in Mudgee or in Coonabarabran or Wellington. So essentially it's the res. These are all res monies, if you like.
Okay, yep.
So the next one is a local community fund, $15 million to improve local amenities and foster stronger community connections. Applicants can apply up to $1 million.
Is that where council will need to be applying for this, or is this again community groups?
That one, I think, would probably be community groups, and I would think improving infrastructure. So if you're a local footy club and you want to improve the grandstand or the toilets or some part of that, that might be a way you could apply for that.
And there's $15 million for that.
There's $15 million for that, yeah.
Wow.
But I'd also say to anyone out there thinking about it, be creative. Go and read the conditions. I say the EnergyCo website. Go and read the conditions about the various grants that are available and see whether or not something that your club, organisation, whatever it is, has been thinking about, and see if you can apply for that. I don't know whether, for example, a Rotary Club could apply for some of that money. Is that something you could do?
Absolutely. Well, you would think they would fall under that banner.
Could Macquarie Homestay go and apply for some of that money, for example? So these are the sort of things that you'd be looking at if I was a community group. The last one is the one that I'm excited about because this is where council comes in.
I'm pretty excited about the other three, so this one must be pretty damn good then.
So this is the Legacy Infrastructure Fund. $45 million for eligible councils to work with communities to deliver infrastructure projects that boost livability and drive regional economic development.
Yeah, right.
So that one is exciting.
And that's definitely where council themselves could be applying for that.
That's the one that council would
Yeah,
apply
yeah.
for. As the way I read them, that's the one that council would be applying for. Now, one of the things that certainly the minister's advisor spoke to me about, they said, would you mind speaking at the presser when Penny Sharpe makes his announcements? Could you also speak at that? And I said, absolutely, happy to do that, happy to help out the state government. What focus do you want me to have? And they said, well, we really love the React Centre.
I was going to say, is this where the React Centre could sort of fall under?
That's right. So we love that concept. And I said, oh, fantastic. I'm more than happy to make the announcement that you're funding the React Centre. Hold on a bit there. Wind it back just a bit there.
Put that shotgun away there, son.
So, and obviously I had my tongue slightly in my cheek when I said that.
Yeah.
But obviously that's the type of thing, because the key to me in that is drive regional economic development. You've heard me talk about before, the React Centre is designed to have career training, designed to have a visitor experience centre. We want, my plan, my vision, if you like, is 100,000 visitors a year going through the React Centre in Wellington, apart from the training opportunity. That the training will make it feasible, will make it justifiable, but the visitor experience component is where you'll get the long-term tail for the Wellington community. So that's the one I'm excited about. Now, again, if you look at that logically, you'd say 45 million. That's going to be divided amongst 4 council areas. That's around about $11.25 million per council area. So how much money do we need for the React Centre? I don't know. We've got our feasibility study being done right now, but it's not the only thing. Certainly we would look at other things that we might want to fund. But again, my logic would be, what can we do that drives economic development? Now, it does also talk about boosting livability. So if you want to improve something in your community, then sure, that's nice as well. So we would look at our community strategic plan and look at what things the community wants us to do. Certainly talk about an indoor heated swimming pool, but I just don't think that's enough for that. I think we're looking at some of those potential plans and some of those things with that, but I don't know it's going to be enough to do what we want to do there.
Because livability is such a broad concept of a word, isn't it? If you think about it, what one person wants, which makes them feel as though the place becomes more livable, could be completely different to another person. So it'll be making up some very interesting discussion on this. Hey, I was just sort of thinking there, Matt, in regards to this. If we go back to the community aspect of this for a second, I know the idea that you're very excited about, and I too, in regards to that last part of funding. But from a community perspective, would it be worthwhile with and there's a significant amount of money here, and what we're hearing is more and more of these funding grants available for community groups. Is there an opportunity here for maybe council to step in to help and some of these community groups by saying, look, we're going to run next weekend or whatever, set up a date and a time to say, okay, we're going to go through how we go about putting ahead grant applications. Let's sort of do some dummy runs. Let's really try to upskill our community so that they are in the best position possible to actually access these grants.
And so we've done that before.
Oh, we have?
We've actually held some grant writing
so
workshops.
it wasn't just my great creative idea just then.
It's a great creative idea.
Someone's already come up with that great creative idea.
Yeah, but it's still a great idea.
Thank you very much.
But we've done it probably more focused on some of our grants or some of the other grants that are out there. There's no doubt about it that to get the community to see if they can access $500,000 and $15 million, and sure, the $10 million for First Nations Fund as well. There's nothing stopping people from Aboriginal organisations coming along to those grant writing workshops, grant application workshops, that sort of thing. So that's certainly something we'll look at. We held one. I ducked into it. I was at the Cultural Centre one day and I just ducked in for 5 minutes. I wasn't going to be able to spend the whole time there, but I just ducked in to say good day and well done on getting there and getting involved in writing grants, because sometimes it is about the grant application. It's not about the project.
That's right.
You've got this wonderful project, but if you don't sell it in a grant application, then you may not get the money. So
it's a competition.
It is a competition.
Because you've got other competing groups here trying to get the same sort of pot of gold there.
Yeah, that's right. So this is significant, and these funds are significant. And again, I'm sure the money will be spread out evenly across the 4 LGAs. I'd love to get more than our even share, but I imagine they'll be very strict on making sure that everyone is dealt with in an even way. So you are competing probably against other ones in your own LGA. But it's pretty exciting there what you come up with $10 million in that First Nations fund, $15 million local community fund.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's significant dollars there to be able to go and do those. So it was absolutely worthwhile for Penny to come out.
I'm glad Penny managed to get you through the fog anyway. That was good because that's a worthwhile announcement.
Yeah, they are. And I'm sure my hope is that our consultants doing the feasibility for the React Centre now, my hope is that we get that information back soon enough to be able to put these grant applications in. But this is all pretty hot off the press, so I don't have those closing dates for that, sorry. But again, it's a state government-run process, but have a look on the Energy Co website. Yep. You'll be able to see that information and then look at what the conditions are and see if your organisation, your club, your group, whatever it might be, can apply for those, because let's get in there and let's take advantage of the fact that we've got the res. You've heard me say it before.
Yeah,
we don't get to say yes or no to these various projects. What we do get to do is we do get to say, how can we make our community benefit from them?
And this is a small time frame, isn't it, Matt? Like this is not going to go on forever.
No, that's right. Take advantage now.
Absolutely. Oh, I like this one, Matt. The RFS Training Academy. This is out near the airport out there, I think. It's been there now for a while, and there's quite a few different operations and groups out there. You were out at a graduation ceremony there during the week. Talk us through it.
So this was the Operational Officer Level 2, often call it the OPPO, Operational Officer. Just run a few of those letters together.
So does that mean that the people who are graduating all become Operational Officers Level 2?
Correct.
Oh,
and they get a certificate to prove that.
They get a certificate to prove it. Love it.
So these are staff, so these are paid staff in the Rural Fire Service.
Yeah.
The Rural Fire Service has about 70,000 volunteers. They also have some paid staff to make sure that the operation is being run from a logistics and operational perspective. And some of those, probably, I talked to one of the people at the graduation ceremony, and probably 60, 70%, maybe even higher, of the people that are staff members, paid staff members, start out as volunteers. And interestingly enough, that the paid staff that are there, probably about 80% of those are volunteering today. So they're still doing some volunteering work, even though they're paid staff members.
Doing both. Wow.
Yeah, doing both. So they love it. And it is a family affair, and there were multi-generations there as well of various people who are graduating. So you've got Operational Officer Level 1, Level 2, Level 3. But here's the great thing about that whole precinct out there. You vaguely mentioned the precinct out at the airport. So you've got the RFS Training Academy. We know that recently there was the Rural Fire Service Aviation Centre of Excellence that was opened. You've got the Police Training Academy, which isn't open yet, but it's getting pretty close. Probably the next couple of months that'll be open. Right. You've got the SES, you've got the Fire Control Centre, you've got the RFS Fire Control Centre, you've got VRA out there. So you've got a number of these different facilities, and you've got accommodation. 127 beds are out there as well. Here's the thing that's fantastic about the graduation ceremony I went to on Thursday morning. Talking to some of the people there, there's 26 in this particular class. This particular course took 8 weeks approximately. Right. But they've been in Dubbo for the better part of 7 of those 8 weeks.
Is that right?
And from this base, many of them didn't even go home from weekends. They're from across the state. Yep. So for some, they'd do the training during the week and they'd say, well, it's not worth going home. I'll just stay here. Maybe every second or third week they might have gone home. Some of them brought their families out to Dubbo.
Brilliant.
And they went and visited the zoo, and they were tourists for the weekend. The ages, I found the youngest one there, the youngest that I could find anyway, was around about 27 and went up into early 50s. I didn't get so rude as to ask the age of some of the ones in the early 50s. But you've got a fair age range there. But obviously at those ages, some people have
young families.
That's right. So they want to bring them out and show them what's there. But this is an ongoing process. So there were 26 in this cohort. They've been here, as I said, better part of 8 weeks. And they do various things.
Right.
One of the students talked about the fact that they went to Benny Forest. I assume she meant Beanie Forest. But they went
Benny Forest. I jogged around Benny Forest a couple of times.
Well, they went and looked at the fire trails out there and looked at various aspects from a fire perspective. So they do some on-site visits around Dubbo, but most of it's in the classroom at the training academy. So that's one course that takes up, it's about 8 weeks.
So, and they did this every year?
Well, no, there's more. This is the thing.
Oh, but wait, there's more.
There's more.
This sounds like a big Kev ad. It's great. I'm loving it.
You've got the level 1, the OPPO level 1 is closer to 13 weeks. So they'll run that at least.
Do they run at the same time or are they separate?
No, and this is the thing. They'll run one. They said today, when we're out there at the graduation ceremony, they said that's the end of it for this course today, but in 2 weeks' time we'll have our next group come in that would be Oppo 1 or Oppo 3, but the
Right.
Oppo 1 is about 13 weeks.
Yep.
So you've
Similar
got...
sort of numbers of people?
No, larger.
Oh, wow.
The Oppo 1 is typically in the 50s.
Oh, my goodness.
So you've got those there for the better part of, over 3 months.
Yeah.
Then you've got level 3, which is probably a similar sort of cohort size, maybe 26 or thereabouts.
Yeah.
And that might be a little bit shorter, it might be 6 weeks.
Right.
So you'll run typically every year at least one of each of those.
So that's half the year.
Half the year just doing this training.
Wow.
But again, you've got all these people in and around Dubbo. Now, one of the things that I first heard about, and I wasn't excited about it when I heard they were building accommodation out there. I thought, well, that's no good because they'll do the training during the day. They'll go to the accommodation at night. They're not interacting with Dubbo. They're not injecting money into our economy. But some of the clever pubs around Dubbo send courtesy buses out,
Nice.
pick them up, bring them in, because they did talk about the fact, we've got trivia night we've been doing, we've got karaoke night. So they were in Dubbo, They were interacting with Dubbo. They talked about the zoo. They talked about being tourists while they were here.
Yep.
So that was all fantastic. So the fact that they're sleeping out there, I think, is okay. And sometimes they're now finding 127 beds is not enough with all the other activities that are out there.
Is that right?
So they're now sending some of those people into Dubbo and staying in motels, but they do want to build more accommodation out there as well.
So this is a training centre, is that right? That's basically the operation. So all these different groups out there run pretty much a training centre-based operations. So the educational aspect of this almost sort of falls like, I'm thinking the reason I'm asking this sort of question and posing this is we look at some of our other educational institutions, Charles University, we've got then the Rural Health associated there with Sydney University, their major operations. This to me seems to sort of sit above that from the point of view of the numbers.
Yeah, the numbers here are fantastic. Sydney University School of Rural Health, obviously the students are here for 4 years, 96 students for 4 years. So that's fantastic. But with here, you've got students coming in, and probably the better part about these students coming in is they're a little bit older, they're earning full-time wage, so they've probably got a little bit more disposable income, so they might inject a bit more into the economy. But this is just one set of training courses, the Oppo 1, 2 and 3, for the RFS Training Academy. That training academy is used not 52 weeks of the year, but pretty consistently for a whole range of things. There might be a conference on, there might be different training courses. But again, now with all of these different activities out there with the Aviation Centre of Excellence and the Police Academy, etc., we're talking to some other organisations that want to build extra facilities out there. From our perspective, from a council perspective, the deal we normally do is we normally say, and these are all state-based organisations, we'll lease you that land because it's airport land. We don't want to sell that land. We'll lease you that land. We'll give it to you for a peppercorn rent, and we'll give you that for long-term. I don't know exactly what those lease terms are, but basically long-term. We're not thinking we're going to take over that land and start running training sessions ourselves. So we want them there. But what it does for our overall economy is fantastic. If it was a private operator, we would lease them. We do have hangars out there. We lease at commercial rates. But with the state government providing services in our community and continually injecting those funds, we're happy to do that as peppercorn
massive,
rents.
isn't it? And you sort of think about, so you're saying there too that the police academy is in, I suppose, the throngs right now of getting all established out there as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And they want accommodation as well. So there is discussion about more accommodation and certainly RFS talking about more training facilities, but other organisations as well. So it's all pretty exciting. And this goes back, and I'll just give you a quick little bit of history. Way back, I'm talking probably 2014 now, there was some information that came to the community's light. It became public information that where the RFS was down near Homebush, their lease was running out at that facility in several years in the future. So we as a council, back in Dubbo City Council days, we said, we've got the Deputy Premier as our local member. We have got the ability with that government maybe to put our case forward. Rural fire service based in Homebush doesn't make sense. So we talked about that a little bit. I had some discussions with Troy Grant. I was mayor at the time, obviously. And in the end, we formally resolved as a council in May 2015 that we should make representations to the New South Wales Rural Fire Service to bring those facilities to Dubbo. So we did that. We basically had a formal resolution. I took that forward to the relevant minister, to our Deputy Premier, etc., and said we should have this, and didn't get very far with that. We then had another resolution along similar lines in April 2016, pitched that idea again. And the feedback I got from Troy at the time was, here are the logical, sensible reasons that the headquarters for the RFS is probably not going to move to Dubbo. But there's some opportunities there maybe for some other things, maybe training, and maybe that'd be better for you. So we went down and had those discussions. Not long after that, the amalgamation happened. So I was out of the loop then. But it was in July 2017 when we were under administration after the amalgamation, not administration because we were going broke, but as happened after, with all the councils across the state, they were amalgamated under administration. So in July 2017, the Dubbo Regional Council Administrator, Michael Knipe, in that position, stood beside Troy Grant as the local member and the Deputy Commissioner, Rob Rogers, and made an announcement that a $9 million training facility would be built there on council grounds again, and our part of that was coming to the party with the peppercorn rant. So that started that whole precinct, and then that allowed other parts of that precinct to be built around that. So what we've got there now started way back, well, at a formal level, started way back in May 2015. So it's a good example.
From little things, big things grow.
Well, exactly right. But it's also a good example of seeing a potential opportunity.
Yep.
Could there be something here? Let's ask the question. Let's put our case forward.
Yep.
Let's keep working with that. And here we are 9 years later. Yeah. This is a fantastic facility for Dubbo, and the other associated facilities are great for Dubbo. But more to the point, we've got this ongoing injection into our economy. So it's
magnificent.
Good
it's
external money,
Yeah, absolutely. Now, speaking about community grants and all of these wonderful things, I really do, Matt. I get excited about community grants because I do know a lot of wonderful community groups out there that are doing terrific things and are always looking for extra funding. So that's why I look at these sort of opportunities that are presenting themselves right now, and I think, well, come on, guys, really get into this. This is what we've been crying out for 20, 30 years, probably longer, to be honest. So it's finally starting to happen. Well, last Thursday night, there was a councillor workshop that was held in regards to the potential for rolling all of this community funding into one funding allocation. Is that correct? Is this the way we're going? I know we talked about this briefly only a couple of podcasts back. Yeah,
no decision's been made yet. We've certainly already rolled two into one, but we've got our destination fund, our events fund, and still our community fund. And there is logic in looking at all of those. Now, again, it's not happening yet. We've still got the separate funds as it stands today. But part of the reason for this workshop was to have some of these discussions and work out, should we be going forward with this? Is this something we can look at? And let's start to put the pieces in place. What does it look like? What's the maximum you can apply for in each fund? How do you break it up? Is it going to be unfair that all of the money then starts to go to one of those areas where before they were segregated and only had certain caps on each of those individual funds? So that was a part of the workshop and discuss that. Now, we use workshops at council to sit down and thrash out ideas. They're not broadcast. They're not public. Information in those is confidential in terms of the individual details of those, so that we really can have some robust conversations and not be reading about it on the news the next day, because we want to throw around different ideas. We want to put forward different concepts and have a bit of an argument about things and throw around that and see what we can come out with at the end. Now, again, no decision's been made. My view is that at some point in time, I think what we'll end up with will be one bucket, and it'll be about $250,000. Because when we combine the various buckets we've got now, it adds up to about $250,000. So my view would be one bucket. A bit of discussion on Thursday night whether that one bucket should be twice a year or 4 times a year. My personal view would be that it would be 4 times a year would be better, because community groups that are small community groups out there that are planning an event, they're not typically full-time on that event planning it a year in advance. What they're doing is, we know we've got that event coming up in X date or on X date. And then a few months before that, they roll out the book from last year and say, right, we've got to get towards this. And we need some money from council. It's going to apply. What? I just missed out on it. And it's 6 months. Our event's over by then. And so there are groups that work feverishly hard for a short time of the year, but they're volunteers, and you can't always expect them to be applying for funds way in advance. I also understand then the extra workload for our staff. That's right, when you're going through these applications 4 times a year compared to twice a year. So there's that to weigh up. So I don't know what will happen there. That'll be a future council will make that decision. But I'm certainly keen to see the idea of rolling up these funds. And I think the staff are seeing that makes sense as well, rather than having these separate individual funds that are segregated and have specific rules. There'll still be rules around them, but specific rules around each of those funds, because sometimes we find some funds are oversubscribed and other funds are undersubscribed. And we think, we should take that money from there, and we could fiddle around with all that and have council resolution to move it from there to there. But really, if we just have one fund, surely that makes it easier, because they're all trying to achieve good things for Dubbo.
Was there any recommendations that sort of got taken from the workshop which will go eventually to a council meeting?
Not yet. It was really for the staff to put forward some of the ideas that they've been looking at after we'd put forward some points previously. Chance for councillors to talk about that, throw it around, thrash it out a little bit, and look at what the big picture will look like. One of the challenges as well is the education process, because you might be applying for a grant. It's the first time you've applied for one. Or you might apply for a grant and you do one a year. And what did we do last year again? So part of it is helping with the education of the public as well, those grant writing workshops, those sort of things.
Yep.
Yeah, the brilliant idea you had.
Oh, thank you very much. Excellent. The point in regards to those the grant writing workshops, would there be potentially an opportunity here for each time these grants come up for so people can put their grant applications in? Is there an opportunity there to sort of potentially then to be running these workshops more regularly for the community out there?
That certainly would be a good plan. Obviously, it costs us money to run the grant workshop, so you weigh up, should we have that money in the grants? How often do we need to run those? Do we only need to run those once a year? If you think about putting in a grant this year, maybe come along and attend those. So that's always a challenge, how often you do things, how many people are attending, are they getting new things out of them, are there new people coming along? So all of those things are weighed up continually to see the best outcomes for the community.
Are you getting more and more community groups applying for these grants, or are the numbers
No, we are, definitely.
Okay, so it's, I suppose the message is getting out there to the community groups to start applying for it. Is
Correct.
it because of the fact the funding's increasing, or is the knowledge base increasing? And
many people have told me that they've listened to our podcast and realised that sometimes they're undersubscribed.
There you go. That's right. Exactly. That's right. That's the most obvious one.
But I've certainly talked about it, definitely, publicly, where they are undersubscribed. And I've said, this fund, we had X dollars and we only got applications for X minus something dollars. Please put your applications in.
Yep.
There's no point having the money sitting in the bank. We want to get that money out there in the community, because I've seen, exactly as you said at the beginning of this segment, I've seen what these groups do with the small amount of money that they get from us, what they turn that into. So absolutely, in my opinion, it's great having that money out there in the community, because people take full advantage of it.
Oh, and to be honest, I've never heard of so much money being available for community groups. Like, it really is. It's phenomenal. And particularly what we just talked about in regards to the state government announcement as well. On top of this, like there is a real bucket full of money right now for people to apply for.
And I don't remember it, and I'm happy if someone sends me an email, rings me up, whatever, and tells me what it used to be. But I'm sure that back in the old Dubbo City Council days, the amount of money we had in total was probably somewhere around the $20,000 mark. So
seems about right.
If that's right, and again, I'm happy to be corrected on that, because I can't remember exactly. I am going back more than 8 years ago now in terms of what we used to do with those funds. But if that's the amount, it's grown significantly from 20 to 250,000.
Absolutely,
so there's a significant change there.
That's right, and this is not just inflation. This is just genuine money increasing that you can do more with.
No, some people would argue that there has been inflation recently.
That's true. There's a little bit of that.
But no, you're right. And again, we want that out there in the community and using it, but let's make sure it gets used in the best possible way.
Absolutely.
So keep an eye out for this. No decision made. At this stage, everything stays the same as it has been, but that's what we're working towards. And you would hope in any organisation you're continually looking at how you do things and how do we improve those things.
Good job. We've been on a road trip. The old field trips. Heading out there, eh? You know, it's. I can just imagine you with a busload of councillors heading out there, singing the wheels on the bus or something like that as you're heading out to what looks like maybe the Alkane set up there, and also ASM. The Toongi and Tomingley sites.
I'd love to tell you all about it, but what goes on tour stays on tour.
Well, I'm glad that you are actually abiding by that philosophy. It's saved me my marriage, I think. It's all of those sort of things.
I won't ask. That sounds too dangerous.
Look, in my younger day, there were some pretty wild bus trips.
So I won't tell you about individual details, because it was a bus trip. It was a tour. But I'll tell you about the general concept of what we did.
Yes.
We've had some councillors interested in the Toongi project. So this is the Australian Strategic Materials Toongi project. So many people are vaguely familiar with this. Rare earth minerals, they'll be used in things like electric vehicles, for example. Very important from a strategic process globally. And people have heard about the Toongi project, obviously out at Toongi on the Oberley Road, for a number of years. So some councillors have been talking about it. The ASM staff that we've met with from time to time, CEO, for example, Mike Sutherland, who's based here in Dubbo, works for Alkane and a bit of ASM, because Alkane used to have that Toongi project, but they split off ASM as a separate company to run specifically the Toongi project. So that's it used to just come under the Alkane umbrella. But Mike's certainly keen to show councillors where it's up to,
Yep.
because the Toongi project is in the Dubbo Regional Council LGA. We'll certainly gain benefits from employment. We'll certainly have voluntary planning agreements in place. This is a mine, for example. But even in the short term, we recently met with Alkane/ASM about some of the road work. So they've got money, and they've got some money combined with the government money as well, their money and government money, to do some things along Oberley Road. So, for example, they'll be fixing up the road along past the zoo. There were different proposals put forward with that particular one where they could look at putting some sort of noise barrier in to stop noise, because all these extra trucks going along there between the roadway and animals in the zoo. But in the end, the decision was made to improve the road surface, and if you make that road surface better, that will actually reduce the noise from the trucks, and that's a win for everyone. So there'll be work done along there adjacent to the zoo. There's also some work being done potentially on one of the very steep low crossings. There's some of the crossings that you drive along, and they
do drop
down.
pretty quick, yes.
They do drop pretty quick. And if there's enough money left over, some work on some other parts of Oberley Road. So we'll see some real tangible benefits. So again, an important project like this is important for councillors to be aware of and understand. But on the back of that, when I've had some discussions with Mike, and I've been fortunate enough to be out to Toongi with Mike, with ASM on several occasions, and also over to Tomingley for Alkane's gold mine. I've been over there a couple of times as well. And I said, well, maybe it's worthwhile taking councillors there. It's outside our LGA, but it gives you an idea of how Alkane treats the overall mining process. Because my opinion, my personal opinion only, this is not a formal council position, but I think in terms of rehabilitation of a site, Alkane are a good corporate citizen. So I thought having a look at Tomingley would make sense as well. So Friday morning we loaded up, myself as bus driver.
Oh, did you now?
Yeah, that's right.
You put the bus driver hat on.
And got some councillors, a group of councillors, and Mike in the bus, and away we went, and basically went out to Toongi, had a look around there, went across to Tomingley, had a look around there. And again, I'm always conscious of councillors' time, so we didn't want to take up a whole day to do that. So basically half a day on the tour, and away we went and had a look at those sites. And just to get an understanding, they'll be great for employment. Well, Tomingley's already great for employment, but you've also got the changes to the Newell Highway. So what they've found now, as Tomingley's been mining over there, and I love, one of the times I visited there and I was just blown away by it, there's a tunnel underneath the Newell Highway. Most people are vaguely aware of it. When they drive along, you see a little fence on either side of the highway, and you see the mine off to the side, and there's a tunnel. Now, that's been put in by a private company. They obviously had to make application to the government and said, we've got work we want to do on that side of the highway, and on this side of the highway, we don't want to have our trucks going across the highway. That'll create danger. You're going on 110 k's an hour. Maybe we just put a tunnel in. And what I love about that is they went through an approval process, got that, bang, before you know it, there's a tunnel in. If that was a government project, it would take a lot longer for a whole range of good, sensible reasons. When private industry comes along, they say, we need to do that, get the approvals, bang, do it, done. So there's a tunnel that goes underneath the highway.
I'm still trying to picture it, vaguely sort of remember sort of last time I went across there and saw that.
Yeah.
Hey, just in regards to it, from a practical side of view of things here in Dubbo, how do we as Dubbo benefit from these mines in our region?
The first obvious one is employment. So this mine, the ASM mine, for example, ignore Tomingley for a second. The ASM mine at Toongi, for example, there'll be several hundreds, and I can't tell you the exact number, maybe 500, employed during construction.
Yeah, right.
The great part about the ASM mine at Toongi is that most of the work is done in the initial processing. So there'll be a processing plant. They might only have a few dozen workers actually doing the mining part, but there'll be several hundred employed in the processing. So they'll get.
Is it about to start, or what's the plan there?
Yeah, it's been next year, every year for a decade.
I was going to say,
now.
it feels like it's been going on for a while.
Yeah, it's still probably a few years away.
Right.
They need to raise about $1.7 billion.
Right.
They've raised a significant chunk of that, maybe $1.3 billion.
There's a car company that's been.
Hyundai was very interested in some of the work and part of their engineering firm. But they've now got some finance from a US organisation, and part of that will be to use a US organisation for some of the construction work, so that maybe moves Hyundai off to the side a little bit.
Okay.
These are all things that are in the technical workings of ASM. I don't propose to know all the inner workings of ASM. But from an employment perspective, that's the obvious one. You'll get hundreds of people employed ongoing. So they'll need to live somewhere, they'll need to buy groceries somewhere, they'll need to go and buy dinner or entertainment, whatever. So they'll be part of our community. You'll have a voluntary planning agreement in place that'll inject money to Dubbo Regional Council to use on things. The roads we talked about before. On the downside, there'll be some trucks, many trucks that'll be using that road initially. The long-term plan is to redo the railway line going across near the Shibble Bridge going out the Oberley Road, so the railway line that's in a state of disrepair now, redo that because it's better to bring all of those goods in and out on the railway line rather than going via the roads.
Right.
But people that live out in Oberley Road will get some road upgrades, fantastic, and then there'll be a railway line at some point in time as well, which you may be able to use for other things as well.
Okay.
So whole range of benefits there, I think, and they're mainly economic, if you like.
Yep. Tomingley, are we getting any direct impacts of that right now?
We might have some people who live in Dubbo that work at the Tomingley mine. That would be about the limit of our benefit from the Tomingley mine. But if you look at it another way, the fact that they're there mining at Tomingley means they're around the area. They may not have got involved in the Toongi project if they weren't there. And we already know, we've talked about it before, they're already doing some core holes around Badengra, looking at potential for another gold mine around Badengra. So if that one comes off, that'll be another huge advantage, more direct impact there. The other one that's fascinating, I think, on the Tomingley mine is they've gone under the road, gone under the Newell Highway, fantastic. Then, as they kept exploring, they found down the Newell towards Dubbo, there's some more gold down there that they could access, and they believe they can access at a rate that would make it worthwhile to do that. The only problem is that it's about where the Newell Highway sits.
Yeah, right, okay.
So they've got a project where they're going to redirect the Newell Highway.
Right.
They've made purchases of various land parcels off various landowners along there, and they're just going to build a new highway along there that then leaves the old highway ready for them to start mining. So again, it gives you two ideas. One, the amount of dollars we're talking about, because that's not a cheap process.
Absolutely.
So gold is obviously worth a bit. We're probably aware of that already. And the second thing is, again, we want to just get access to that. Let's go to the government. Here's the application. Let's go through an approval process. Okay, let's do it. And that happens much quicker than imagine if the government said we need to rebuild or redirect the Newell Highway. But again, that'll be an advantage because suddenly you'll have a brand new Newell Highway for that section. So rather than the government of the day, and that's state highway, so that's not council's responsibility, that's a state government responsibility, they'll get an advantage because they'll get a brand new section, which means they don't have to worry about maintaining that for a number of decades going forward.
There you go. Again, I had no idea that was the case. I had no idea too that there was so much gold in them there hills.
Yeah, that's right. Now, did I skirt around what went on tour, stayed on tour enough? Did
I think you did very, very well, and I think everyone's marriages are safe.
Good.
Oh, the shared pathway. I probably use that shared pathway down there near the Macquarie River and the new section's been built there. I use it at least maybe twice, if not three times a week. I'm a big fan of it, actually, to be honest. I think they've done a fabulous job down there. It looks terrific. The only thing that's missing right now is a name.
That's right.
So is there, looks like some voting that's sort of coming forward in regards to putting a name to the shared pathway. So we don't have to care about the shared pathway anymore. We can actually give it a name.
Well, this is the thing. The whole idea of naming this came about because it was being called the Legacy Shared Pathway. And one of our councillors said, well, it's not the greatest name in the world, is it? Legacy Shared Pathway. Now, that was because the funding program was a legacy funding program. So, in other words, it was just called that in general colloquial terms because that was the funding program. So it just became, oh, yes, we're doing work on the Legacy Shared Pathway. And so one of our councillors said, well, maybe we could come up with a name for it. Took that to council, obviously, then resolved by a majority of councillors, as would need to be. One councillor doesn't just come up with a bit of a whim and then suddenly that's the thing that we're all doing. And I have seen a few people make some comments about the fact that it's a bit of a joke, a bit of a waste of time naming that. It's just part of Tracker Riley. And it is part of Tracker Riley, but it is a bit different. It's pretty obvious it's a bit different. So I'm pretty comfortable with that having a different name. We've got 7 finalists, 7 shortlisted names. You can go to Your Say, of course, and vote.
Right.
Voting closes on the 29th of July.
So get in quick.
Get in quick, that's exactly right. And with my apologies for any pronunciation errors, I'll give you the 7 names that are the shortlisted ones. First one is Birdsong Path. I'm pretty confident I pronounced that one correctly.
That's well done.
So that's named for the nearest bird seen along the path.
Ah,
okay, makes sense.
Yep.
The second one is Gira Gira Mawang.
Okay, it's Aboriginal, obviously, for what?
Happy all together.
Oh, Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
I like that.
It sounds like happy song.
Yeah, yeah.
The next one is Track O'Reilly.
Yep.
So let's just leave it Track
Yep.
O'Reilly,
Yep.
basically the same as the rest of the whole track that goes around the river,
Hmm.
and that's fine. So that's an option there. Let's see how the voting goes on that.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is Yiramal, which means bank of the river.
Okay. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
The next one, we're getting trickier now, Bilajurang Wagira,
Right.
Platypus Walk.
Oh, do we ever see any platypus down there?
I haven't seen
No, I
any.
can't say I've seen any platypus,
along there,
but anyway.
but they could be there.
Could be there.
maybe.
I've seen the odd platypus out at the zoo.
Yeah, well, lots of platypus.
Yeah, there is
Pusses
a
out
big HQ out there now.
Yeah. Now, the next one, this is getting tricky because this is a word that's got a D to begin with and a Y as a second letter.
Oh, wow.
That's not really something that our tongues
No.
in our English pronounce that well,
Yeah.
but I'll give it a go. Deiragang. Now, that's a name, as I understand it, for a magpie, Aboriginal name for a magpie.
Yeah, well, I do see plenty of them down there.
Yeah, too many, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
So that's to honour the rich bird life along the Macquarie River. I can
Okay.
think of other names besides rich for magpies.
Yes, that's right, exactly, especially getting up to around September, October.
That's right. And the next one is Yin Yamara, which apparently means respect, be gentle and polite.
Yeah, I've come across the Indamara term. It's a great term.
Yep. So once voting closes, the preferred name from that voting will go back to council. Now, it doesn't have to be, councillors don't have to decide on the preferred name. It's really to get some feedback from the community. It's not a statistically valid survey because we're not going out and getting random sampling. People are doing self-selection, if you like. So basically, it'll go back to the council meeting. Council will decide on a name, a preferred name, and then that'll go to the Geographical Naming Board for final approval.
Where's that? Is that a New South Wales board
It's a
or something?
state government board, yeah.
Okay. So from here, let's say for argument's sake, we get 100 people that vote and 80% go for the Undermurra, for argument's sake. Does that then mean that council looks at that, well, 80% of our people voted for it, therefore, but at the end of the day, it's only 80 people. Is that a fair representation in regards to what would be enough, though, to justify calling the track there the Undermurra track?
You're asking me to get in the heads of 9 people and tell you how /
That's
why
exactly
that
what I'm
won't
doing.
make a
That's
decision.
exactly what I'm doing.
Councillors will make the decision based on the feedback we get, but again, the feedback is not to say this will be the way it's named. I think some other organisations have come up with Bodie McBoatface or similar
Yes,
types
they
of
have, that's
names
right, yes, yes.
based on we're only going to make the decision based on public voting.
Yep.
And again, when it's self-selection, it's not really a true representation of a statistical or statistically valid survey of the community. Councillors will take that feedback, as with all feedback that councillors get, and they'll weigh that up with their own thoughts and own ideas and come up with a decision at the end of it. Keep in mind there were 20 different names that came in,
Okay.
and those 7 are the ones that have been shortlisted from those 20.
So council staff have managed to short this down to 7, have they?
Correct, and I don't know, I haven't seen all those 20, so I don't know what
Okay.
all those 20 look like, whether some of them were Tracky McTrackface or something, I'm not sure.
I did put in the Mark Barnes track, but obviously didn't get the cut, so I don't know what happened there.
Could be late entry, could be number 8.
Yeah, there
Mark
we go. Yep.
Barnes
I'll
part,
put him with a
because
bullet with that one. There we
I've
go.
heard that Mark used it 2 or 3 times a week.
I do.
So that should be enough.
Hey, I think that should be enough justification right there.
That's right.
And let the funding just set the good times roll. This is a podcast talking about different sort of funding announcement because there's been a funding announcement for the library. $90,000. You beauty. What are they going to do with that? Are they going to buy some books, or is it? How does that all work?
Well, a few things there. I do want to talk about, first of all, that our library is one of our very well utilised facilities.
Can I also just say there, the other day when I was driving past the library, it was just before 10 o'clock, so maybe the library opens at around 10, and I was getting a coffee, and their dead set would have been 20 people lining up to go into the library. Wow. It was very impressive.
Lined up.
Yeah. I thought you were giving a poetry recital or something. I don't know.
Must have been. One of the things with libraries is that after a certain amount of time, you drop off the borrowers list or you drop off the membership list, if you like, so that we're
Okay.
not keeping people on there forever. But we still have typically close to half of the people in the LGA that are members of the library. So people use the library
Over
services.
half
Well, under half, but close to
of
half.
the LGA in the library.
That's pretty good.
Wow, that's
now
pretty
that's
impressive.
obviously we've got Wellington Library. We're part of Macquarie Regional Library, which goes across several
Yeah.
LGAs. one of the things that certainly strikes me, and I don't go to the library that often, but they're certainly changing. It used to be a place, I remember when I was younger, you were dead quiet. You couldn't say a possible word in there, and you had books. You'd go in and borrow those books, and you might
pretty much my
sit
memory
down
of
somewhere.
school libraries as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Certain librarian would crack the whip pretty strong on that one.
Exactly right. And you might borrow a book or you might sit down somewhere quietly and read it. But you've got more. You've obviously got computers in them now. You've got spaces where you can read. You've got meeting spaces in the library. There are obviously areas that are closed off so they're quiet.
Can the public book meeting spaces?
Yeah, you can go and do that.
There you go.
But even just as I walked around, we went down and took some photos about this particular funding announcement. And as I walked around, there were people sitting there just listening to something. Could have been music, could have been some sort of
podcast,
audible
whatever.
book. Podcast, that's right.
Straight from the mayor's mouth, that sort of stuff.
Exactly
Absolutely.
right. You saw people just sitting around reading books in relaxing areas. You saw people doing some work. There were looked like students there doing some schoolwork or might have been university work. And you did see some people in the meeting room. So there's certainly a difference there. And I've been to events at the library. There have been book launches. It surprised me. It's a good place to launch a book from. But I've seen different events that have been held at the library as well. So we received $90,260. And this came from the New South Wales Government Public Library Infrastructure Grant Program. There were 28 councils across the state that received some money there. So we are going well at the moment in terms of grant funding. So that was fantastic. So we'll use this money to create some collaborative and individual spaces in the library. So there'll be kind of like extra study areas, and they'll have some power, some USB charging ports, that type of thing.
Yep.
And in Wellington, we'll do a bit of refurbishment of some of the area there again, make it a bit more accessible, and some power and USB ports as well. So basically just giving you more services there to be able to have the difference or the changing face of the library to make sure we're catering to the needs as we're going forward and those different needs.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it is a nice spot. Libraries are a nice spot. And again, they're being used differently. You've got people who may not have a computer at home. They're going in there to write a CV or do something where, so Smarty grants, when you go and apply for a grant through council, you've got to use Smarty grants.
Yep.
Some people don't have a computer at home, so they go in and they use the computers that are there to do this Smarty grants
Are the
application.
librarians and the assistants down there, are they trained up to assist people on those type of things as well?
With limitations, obviously. They're not going to sit there and do some JavaScript for you. Yeah. But certainly just to get access into the computer and open things up. Again, they're not going to write a grant application for you. But it's interesting, you mentioned there that we are talking about grants, and there's a few things for grants. When we get grants, there's a number of reasons we get a grant, but certainly our reputation is an important part of that. When I've talked to various government departments, state and federal, they want to know that when they give money out, it's going to be utilised. And that's, it sounds obvious, but a bit like when I was talking before, that I want to give money that's our grant money to our community because I know it's going to be utilised and make the community better.
Yep.
Well, the state and the federal government are the same. If they give money to a council, are you going to use this? Are you going to get this thing built or this thing done?
Yep.
And I've just got some figures here which I think are quite telling in our reputational improvement, if you like, in terms of being able to get grant funds. Now, there's a whole range of variables that go into grants and grant funding, but if you start to prove that you aren't delivering on the promise or you're being problematic in terms of the way they're delivered, then I'm sure that when they're doing those assessment of those grant applications, they say, well, this organisation hasn't done that well in the past. So I grabbed the last few financial years to have a look at. 2017-2018 financial year, we received, and these are capital grants, we received $35 million. Now, that's when money was flowing from the amalgamation. So 2017-2018, you still had an administrator in place on the 1st of July. You had, in 2017, you had the elections towards the end of 2017, and then they had the elected council in end of 2017 through 2018. So that financial year partly had an administrator in place and partly had the councils in place. But again, they were throwing a lot of money at amalgamated councils to help you.
Well, they wanted to see
together.
it work, didn't they? Because there was such controversy surrounding us. So let's get this thing working. Let's get some good examples.
That's right. A bit of a sugar hit. A lot of people talked about during the amalgamation process is going to be a sugar hit. So $35 million Dubbo Regional Council received in the 2017-18 financial year. The next year received $28 million. So you kind of think, well, it was probably going to go down a bit because you probably had that sugar hit there and away you go from there. So that was the 2018-2019 year. Then the 2019-2020 year, it dropped down to $17 million.
Well, that's a bit of a drop.
It is a bit of a drop, and I do wonder whether we weren't really delivering on some of our promises previously, so whether or not some of those funds started to dry up. Then you get to the 2021. Now, sorry, it's always confusing when you get to the first 20s, isn't it?
Yep.
So the 2020/2021
Yep.
financial year. So that's when you basically had that council continuing on towards the end of that time frame, 28 million. Then you move to 21/22 financial year, so that's the new council now, $29 million. 22/23 financial year, $30 million. So it's certainly gotten back up there.
Back up again.
That's right, to those numbers there. And it's a tough environment at the moment for grants, both federal and state, because there was so much government money used during COVID and so much money given out. And that's why I was a bit surprised at that one in 2019/2020. There was the first half of, or the second half of that financial year, but the first half of 2020, it was really COVID impacted.
Yep, absolutely.
There was a fair bit of money being thrown around, so only 17 million seems surprising there. But when you look at the current environment, it is a bit tougher. So I'm not sure how we'll go with that 30 million. It might drop it down a little bit from there, but certainly getting that money, delivering on that, delivering on the promises, and we do sign a deed for these various grants. So there is some money we've talked about there. $90,000 for the libraries. That's only $90,000.
But it's another grant.
That's another grant.
There
That's
we go.
right. We're talking about $30 million. We talked about the Teamsters Park money last week, for example, for refurb of tennis courts down there in Wellington. So there is money definitely out there at the moment, and we seem to be getting, I think at least, our fair share of that money, not because I knock on a minister's door and say, "Hi, I'm Matthew," and I smile nicely. I'm sure it's because we do good grant applications and we deliver on those grant applications as well.
Absolutely. And we're seeing the fact that it's not just little fish we're getting the big fish as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Now, you put on your guest speaker cap there during the week and you went to the Clean Energy Council Australian Clean Energy Summit. Boy, oh boy, that's a bit of a mouthful of a summit, isn't it? They couldn't have shortened that there for you?
They could try, but they did. They called it the CEC-ACE Summit, so they did basically shorten that down a little bit.
CEC-ACE.
And I reckon you could probably, if you wanted to, you could probably go to a summit, a conference, some sort of gathering in the state, forget about the nation, in the state, every week, maybe twice a week and 3 times on Sundays if you wanted to. There are a whole range of summits that you get invited to. I certainly get invited to many of those to speak at those or just to go and attend some of those. But I feel that it's certainly important from my perspective to at least attend some. But when you've got a chance to speak at them, you've got a chance to promote Dubbo. That's the whole point of, in my opinion anyway, being there. You might want to share your information with people in the audience as well, but certainly promoting Dubbo and promoting opportunities for Dubbo.
Do you find when you go to these conferences, summits, / type things, do you find there the fact that the attendees to these summits, from Dubbo's perspective there, do they sort of see us as at the forefront of the renewable energy zones and all of that sort of stuff and what's happening in this world?
Well, with renewables, absolutely at the forefront, but obviously, when they ask me to come and speak at various conferences, whatever the topic might be, they're seeing Dubbo as a leader in that area. So whether it be speaking at a summit about housing, whether it be speaking at a summit about renewables, whether it be speaking at a summit about financial sustainability, they're obviously seeing Dubbo as a leader in that area. And so sometimes I get asked to speak at summits because I wear my Regional Cities New South Wales hat, which again I think is fine for a mayor to be representing on an organisation like that, representing 15 cities. Sometimes it might be because I'm involved with Regional Capitals Australia. I'm the secretary of that organisation, so capitals across the nation. And sometimes it's because I'm mayor of Dubbo Regional Council. Sometimes it's because I'm just a good bloke, I think.
Yeah, well, that's right. Exactly. There you go.
I'd like to think so. But
absolutely.
Maybe it's because of the other
We'll
titles.
put all of the above in there. That's it.
Right. But certainly you don't normally find that they'll ask people to speak at a conference who are people who are laggards or people who they don't think that community or that group you're associated with are going poorly. They normally have an opinion that group is going well, which is why they want to hear from you. But what I always find, so again, I spoke during the week at this particular summit and there were a few people there that I was vaguely aware of. So Matt Keane, many people are aware of Matt Keane, so he was speaking at the summit. Helen Haynes, she's the federal member for Indi. I prefer to call it Indy, but it's Indi, which is the federal seat down in Victoria.
Right.
Helen Haynes, so she's the federal member there. And so you had people that were well-known, big names there, but even just after I spoke, I was approached by probably 7 or 8 people came over to me afterwards and asked how we're doing something or what we're doing in some area. One of the people that came forward was someone who's got the acting role as the Commissioner, Renewable Energy Commissioner. Now, Andrew Dyer, D-Y-E-R, was that Commissioner. He's resigned, so there's someone in the acting role. Now, this is someone that I met in Canberra when he was in a different role. He came over to me afterwards and said, Matthew, you might remember me. You met me at the department. The department's called DQ. It's got a long title, but basically called DQ. Yep. And I said, yep, I remember that conversation he had. Well, I've taken over from Andrew Dyer in an acting role for the time being, but gee, I'd love to come out to Dubbo because we hear you doing some really good things out there and see what you're doing, see how we can learn from that and how we can improve it for you and everyone else. Yep. Now, that contact, the Commissioner for Renewable Energy, and I can't remember the exact title, but it's basically the Renewable Energy Commissioner, I'll call him. Yep. That particular person is very influential in the nation. So having that person come along and talk to us in Dubbo about what we're doing and see if we can talk about, for example, the guidelines around the Community Benefit Fund. You've heard me talk about that a number of times. If we can put our case forward again, can we get some benefits for Dubbo and all the places that are being impacted? So just those little opportunities that you've got potentially to talk to people. Another person came over and this particular person's trying to do some engagement with First Nations people around renewables. And they said, we hear you're doing some good work out there. We'd love to come and look at what you're doing, learn from you. And yep, sure, here's my card.
So, do you find too that like a conference like this that you spoke at, or sorry, a summit in regards to this one, the people who attend, are they mainly council representatives? Is that who are the sort of attendees at a place like this, or are they from private sector as well? Or
yeah, I spoke at this same conference 2 years ago.
Okay,
and we had one room, and there would have been maybe 150 people in the room. I went along this time and I went, wow, this has grown. So they had, I think there were 3 concurrent sessions running when our session was on, and our session would have had easily over 200 in the room. Yeah, so suddenly this conference over a couple of years has grown. The trade show, the last time I went to the conference, it had a small trade show, not much at all. This time the trade show was full. So it's certainly grown quite significantly without a doubt. Now in the room, because there was a speaker that spoke before me, and he had some interesting things to say, just some data he'd gathered, etc. And someone said to me, so what did you think of the previous speaker's talk? And I said, well, it was a great talk, the wrong audience. And you could see people in the room go, what do you mean? I said, so in this audience, I think we've probably got people who are convinced that renewable energy is going to be a transition that's occurring and we're trying to take advantage of it. So in the end, I said, okay, put your hand up if you're involved in the renewable energy sector as a proponent or a consultant to a proponent. Most of the audience put their hand up. Put your hand up if you're involved in government in some way, local government, state government, etc., involved in renewables. Probably another. So if the first one, if I go on a percentage, maybe 80% of the audience put their hand up. Put your hand up, government, council, etc. Probably another 15% or so put their hand up. And then I said, put your hand up if you're a coal miner.
Right. Yes.
And 3 people did put their hand up.
Okay.
So there were 3 people there. But the talk before mine, who was this particular guy was talking about just some data and analysis of that, he needed to be talking to, and I did say this, that guy needs to go and talk at the conference that's called Coal Miners Are Us, or Burn More Coal, or Let's Have More Coal-Fired Power Stations, because the data that he had made sense to everyone in the room, but everyone in the room already got it.
Yeah.
He needs to be talking to the audience where they haven't got it yet. So the people in the room, that was a very long answer to your question.
No, that's all right.
The people in the room were probably people who were very focused on how do we deliver the best thing. Now, one of the things that I spoke about was trying to make it a better relationship.
I was going to say, like, what did you particularly then talk about?
So winning hearts and minds was what my topic was. And one of the things was about how you create a better relationship between the community and the various proponents. Now, I'm not saying that it's perfect in our area. I'm not saying that everything we do is absolutely perfect. But again, part of the reason for these discussions is someone's doing it. It seems to be working. What are you doing? How are you doing it? Let's learn from that and let's ask some questions and go through that path. So in terms of that, there, I suppose, it was really about the proponents in the room. Can you do these things, please? And this will make it better for the state and state government and council people. Okay, having these conversations in this way might make it better. I think bottom line is it's about communication and also real communication. I did talk about something that I've often talked about if you're talking to people who are against renewables and they don't want it near them or whatever, and the old thing I keep talking about, stand there and put your hand up at Bondi Beach and stop the tide coming in. When you do that, then move on to stopping the transition, because it's happening. Once you are real with people rather than give them false hope, then I think people come to grips with that. And limbo, I've always said it, limbo is a terrible place to be. Get a yes or get a no, at least get a decision. You get a limbo. If someone comes along to the state government and says, I don't like these renewables, can you please stop them? And the state government rep says, okay, sure, we'll consider what you've got there, we'll look at that and we'll think about that. And the person goes, well, I might get this. But then you're left in this limbo for a long time sometimes, rather than, no, this one's going ahead, or yes, this one will be stopped by the information you've given us. Make those decisions and then keep moving on with it. Because if you get a no, you can get to grips with it. You can say, okay, I'm not happy with that, but at least I've got a decision. Let's now deal with that decision as it stands, rather than being left in limbo. So I think, bottom line from my perspective, was more communication, more open, honest communication. And I did say to the proponents, whatever you do, please don't make farmers sign NDAs. The worst thing you can possibly do, if you want to lose all community trust, when you make farmers sign an NDA, straight away the neighbour looks over the fence and says, I know that Mark Barnes, he's getting a better deal than me, damn it. And Mark looks across the fence and says, I know that Matthew Dickinson,
so
he's getting a better deal than me.
Secret squirrel sort of stuff going on. Yeah.
Crazy, it's terrible.
Did you feel as though the fact, though, too, that my general take on this is that there seems to be almost like a growing sense of a counterculture against renewables that seems to be sort of becoming fed with what I also feel is a lot of misinformation, which is, gets thrown through the social media networks all the sort of time. Like you're talking about winning the hearts and minds. And how would you go about trying to counter that?
I think the crucial thing is really information, correct information. And people believe what they want to believe. They hear what they want to hear. They see what they want to see. So even I've seen this happen. I've sat down with someone who said, I know this is what happens, and they give me some crazy idea. I was okay, let's just look at that. Let's research it together. Let's go through and look at this. Let's go and find what we can find in your line of thinking, and let's see what we can find out there that's maybe something that is a more considered resource. And you go back to your school days, you hand in that assessment, young student, make sure you've got 2 separate references, maybe 3 separate references for that information. Don't just rely on, I saw it on the internet and that's all okay. So what I tend to find with some of those is where you'll find these myths, some of these different things that people put forward, you'll find some Facebook sites that'll have this information. And that's about it. There might be lots of Facebook sites quoting the same misinformation. And then you go and look for the real story and you'll find things like Wikipedia or encyclopedias or government resources or scientific papers. And you just really have to say, so which one do you think is sprouting the correct information? Now, some people say, well, we know it's all a government cover-up. We know those sites will say that because it's all a conspiracy theory. And then sometimes you throw your hands in the air and say, well, if you're not going to believe the respected scientifically researched sites, then you're not going to believe anything. Why is that Facebook site more believable than this site over here? And I did read a story recently on some people that have managed to get out of a cult. And for them to change their mind, the amount of information they had to have, the amount of compelling information they had to have to finally realise that they were in a cult was incredible. So it wasn't an even keel. It wasn't, okay, here's a factor of 10 that shows I'm okay, and here's a factor of 10 to show this is a cult. It was a factor of 1 to show that I'm okay here, and a factor of 50 to show that this is really a cult and I should get out. So it took a lot. And I feel, not that I'm calling people in anti-renewables cults, but I'm saying that the misinformation, you seem to be able to have a lot more information. If I want to believe that renewables are bad, I see one Facebook site or I hear one friend at the pub tell me that, and then that's it, I believe that. I need to see lots of compelling information in the other direction for then to get to the point to say...
And it's probably also to the desire to want to see that other information as well.
So that's why I say that old saying about I see what I want to see, I hear what I want to hear, I believe what I want to believe, absolutely. And I had a friend of mine who was sitting there having coffee with, and this is a couple of years ago now, and he said, I don't believe in climate change. And I said, okay. And I picked up the coffee cup in front of me and I said, I don't believe in gravity. I don't believe in gravity. And I was, putting my fist together tightly. I don't believe in gravity. I left the coffee cup and it fell to the table and smashed. And I had to pay the cafe some money for the coffee cup I just smashed. But I was trying to make it dramatic. I said, you know what? I didn't believe in gravity. And for all my heart, I wished against gravity. I didn't believe it. But guess what? I let go of that cup and it still fell to the ground. So whether you believe in climate change or you don't believe in climate change, guess what? It's happening out there. It's real. Your belief is not really going to change what happened with climate change. Now, I'm saying I'm like a bit of a zealot there. I don't mean to, but...
Yeah, no. But it's a fair point, because I think that's exactly... I think part of it, what I refer to like almost like the counterculture sort of stuff that's really sort of coming through. We've got this whole notion of the fact that climate change, there's so much evidence out there to show the fact it's actually happening. Yet, as you say, someone puts up the big one right now, and maybe because it's the fact we're seeing more of them. You got the wind turbines. Oh boy. You've only got to open up your Facebook page, and there'll be another picture of some, wind turbines sort of exploding or whatever, or that there's someone sort of talking about that the damage that these wind turbines are doing to the environment, and you just sort of think, wait a minute, like you're missing the whole point here. Why are you so focused on just this part of it, and why does this sort of feel as though this is the reason why you want to go against what science is saying is actually happening? So again, what you're saying, I think, Matt, is spot on, but it's a battle though.
It is a battle, and the old argument that's easy to win when you're talking about this is some people say, I don't like the look of them. There's a range of reasons people don't like renewables. That's fine, but I don't like the look of that. And I normally say, well, we've got a choice. We can see a big open-cut coal mine, or we can see an open-cut coal mine and coal-fired power stations spitting out smoke. You can see the pollution coming out of that coal-fired power station.
Yes.
Or you can see a wind turbine. Ideally, we'd all love to see a beautiful vista of trees and poppy fields and ocean. That'd be wonderful. But if we've got a choice, if we want power, if we want to be able to turn the lights on and they come on, and we've got a choice of seeing or a coal mine in general, which we see a lot of those not too far away from us, and they don't look particularly attractive, or the coal-fired power stations or wind turbines, I think the lesser of the evils there. So for people that are convinced against them, well, what we're going to do now is we're going to build a coal-fired power station next to you, or an open pit or an open coal mine, open pit coal mine there, and is that okay as well? And, some people say about the whole idea, actually I don't even want to go through the myths, it's too frustrating, but
that's right.
The whole idea of these wind turbines destroying farming land, well, what about that coal mine? What did that do to farming land there? So so let's keep it in perspective here. So it is interesting, and I just think some of those, the counterculture, there are some people I suppose I don't engage with heavily, because you can see that it doesn't matter how many hundreds of arguments you put forward to show what they're too far down the rabbit hole in their beliefs. And so you've got to use your time most efficiently, I suppose.
Absolutely.
And it's not my job to go and convince people about renewables. We are not the consent authority for any renewables. My job, I don't have any say on yes or no for all the renewable projects. My job as the mayor and council's job is to say, well, let's see what we can do to benefit our community. They're happening, so we can stand there and cross our arms and put bulldozers in front of them, which we couldn't do because that's illegal, but to try and stop all these things, we're not going to stop it because it's not inside our powers. Or we can say,
take advantage of it.
It's happening. Yeah. Let's take advantage of it. What can we do to take advantage of it? And that's certainly the approach that I take. That's certainly the approach that council takes. Let's be positive with these things. Let's accept that they're happening and adapt to them happening, and then see if we can really benefit from them, because there are huge opportunities if we open our eyes. If we close our eyes and keep putting our hand up to stop them, we lose those opportunities. So you've got to make a pragmatic decision sometimes. And the old Irish prayer comes into play. You're thinking of it, weren't you?
Look, it's funny you should mention that. You're a mind reader as well. There it is.
That's right. The serenity prayer. Give me the courage to change the things I can, because sometimes those things are hard.
Yes.
The serenity to accept the things I can't. But most importantly, the wisdom to know the difference.
Absolutely.
And in this case, I suppose I'm trying to use my wisdom and say, I can't stop renewables. Council does not have the power to stop renewables. So I'm using my wisdom to know the difference and accept them, but also take advantage of them.
It's a lovely way to finish. Rightio, Mayoral Memo time. So, just a little update this week in regards to the Mayoral Memo. I'm going to have to sort of put it out there to you, mate. I didn't read your Mayoral Memo this week. Oh. I know. I know you got it. I know. I don't know. Did I miss it? I don't know. I'm trying to think why I didn't read it this week, but I did happen to miss it. So therefore, you're going to have to give me an update of what you wrote about this week. Well,
I did write about Australia Day, the potential change of the event. As we know, we talked about last week, we've got the committee recommendation going through to the council meeting. And one of the things I thought of was that if you're in public service in some way, shape or form, whatever that might be. You don't have to be on council or a state or federal politician, but if you're in public service in some way, if you want to avoid controversy, then you can do it quite easily by saying nothing, doing nothing, being nothing. Essentially, by making a decision, that sometimes creates controversy. But I know that our councillors are keen to make sure that we don't sit around and do nothing. Our councillors have shown over the short time this council has been together since the end of 2021 that they've said we need to advance our council, our city, our region, and that means we have to make decisions and take actions. So sometimes that leads to criticism, sometimes it leads to controversy. And
yes, we had a few of those in the last few months, haven't we?
Well, we have, but that's okay. I don't really have a problem with controversy, I don't have a problem with criticism because we live in a country where it's okay to criticise things, okay to have a different opinion, and I don't want to use the example of Trump in America, but you're probably not going to be shot for having a different opinion. People are going to say, I don't agree with your opinion. Sometimes people don't say it in a very nice way, but sometimes people say, I don't agree with you. That's fine. Tell me why you don't agree with my opinion, and that's fine. So keep in mind that all of this makes sure that we're having robust discussions and a good decision-making process. And this whole process that we've got in place with standing committees and then through the council meeting, I think that is a perfect example of having a good, robust process in place. And I've seen people talk at me, not necessarily with me, but at me about the decision about Australia Day or whatever it is, but people forget that all of the decisions of council are decisions of council. They're a majority vote of councillors. They're not my decisions. They're not my crazy whim. They're not something that I go, yes, today we're going to go and change this. I am the representative of council, very proud representative of council, but I'm the representative of council and council decisions. Even when I don't necessarily agree with them, I accept the greater wisdom of the democratic group rather than my own individual opinion.
I think the other thing about that is that even though that as the mayor, you will obviously make statements there from the mayor's perspective of what the council decision has been. So you are the representative in that front, and you will be the vocal representative in that front. But you're also entitled to have your own opinion, Matt.
No. But not after a council resolution.
No, not after council. But I'm saying in regards to opinion on subjects and matters and stuff like that, you're entitled to an opinion. And this is the thing sometimes I think where I personally believe that some people get a bit confused. It is I know probably in your situation it's probably difficult sometimes to be the mayor and to have to always sort of to come across as being, okay, whenever I put my opinion across here, this has to make sure that it's coming across as the mayor's opinion. But I also believe the fact too is that you have your own personal opinion on these fronts as well.
It's difficult to have that because you can get a call from a journalist and say, what's your personal view on the best rugby league team? And I say Manly Warringah.
Well, apart from that fact, that's a terrible opinion, and I will disagree on that.
But then the article that gets written is that the mayor supports Manly Warringah. Now, is the mayor supporting Manly Warringah because there's a council resolution that the mayor's speaking about? No, there isn't. So it's very difficult for me to ever say I've got a personal opinion. Now, I will talk about my personal opinion in a lead up to a vote of council if it's very specific around that. But once that vote happens, then it's not my personal opinion. And what makes me laugh sometimes is when people, I'll be out there putting forward the view of council after a council decision, and people will criticise me for that. Oh, this is a crazy thing. The mayor thinks this. And I might have voted against that.
Yep.
And I actually absolutely fully believe what this person's saying, where they're accusing me of having this stupid idea and a stupid opinion. And it's ironic that I actually don't agree with that decision, but my job is to represent the view, the position of council. And you read section 226 of the Local Government Act, it talks very specifically about the roles of the mayor, and it talks about the spokesperson for the decisions of council. So it is an important one. So just briefly, I want to just talk a bit more about Australia Day because I'm trying to get people to bring their opinions forward, exactly because we haven't made a resolution yet. And a few things. I want to just make sure that I've stressed it, and I try and stress this every time I talk about it, that council is not trying to change the date. We don't have the power.
No.
We don't have the inclination. We don't want to change the date. Australia Day has been the 26th of January and has been that way, unified across all states since 1946. Not forever, as some people believe, but in 1946 was when the states and territories agreed to recognise Australia Day. And then in 1994, the 26th of January was unified as a public holiday across the nation. So it hasn't been forever, but it's certainly been historical.
Yep.
But regardless of that, we don't have the power to go and change that. 26th of January unified as a public holiday since 1994, that wasn't a council decision.
No.
That was across the nation decision. So the date is the 26th of January. What we've proposed and recommended to council on the back of the decision by the Honourable Andrew Giles MP, who made a change, or through the Parliament, he announced the change on the 16th of December 2022, a change to the Australian Citizenship Ceremonies Code. So we're proposing that Wellington has an event at 6:30pm on Friday the 24th of January. That's the event.
Yep.
That's not the day.
That's right.
26th of January in Wellington is still Australia Day. In Dubbo, 25th of January at 6:30pm for the event, the ceremony, not the 26th of January.
Yep.
So those two dates. I had a discussion recently with Steve Waugh. And I'll talk about that in a future podcast, a whole discussion there. Steve Waugh is a former Australian of the Year. Guess what day of the year he was announced publicly as the Australian of the Year?
25th of January.
25th of January by the Prime Minister of the day. And I'm trying to think when it was. It was probably around 1994. What do you reckon? No, it wouldn't have been 94. It would have been 2004.
Yeah.
Because 1989, they went to the Ashes, scored his first centuries over there in England. So he would have been captain towards the end of the 90s. So I reckon 2004, but don't hold me that. I'll talk about that in the future.
Yep.
That's my quick little guess there. But again, it was the 25th of January, not the 26th of January. The ceremony for the announcement of the Australian of the Year is the day before. They're not saying he's not really the Australian of the Year, because he wasn't announced on Australia Day. That's fine. It's a twilight event.
I think I used the analogy there last week about the fact your birthday.
Yeah, I like that one.
But let's talk about it, the fact that if your birthday falls on the 26th of January, well, that's not going to change, but we might have the party for it 2 days beforehand because that's more convenient for people.
Correct.
And I think that's just a really nice way for people just to keep it on perspective.
Yeah, I like that example there. Yeah, it's a good one. So that was my mayoral memo this week, talked about that process and talked about the fact that it's okay to disagree with councillors. I mean, it would be nice if people did it in a respectful way, but it's okay to disagree, have a different opinion. Councillors are there, and councillors in particular are paid a very low sum of money, $27,000 to be a councillor. You've got a lot of community expectations, a lot of reading you've got to do. Councillors are in there not for the money, they believe in the community, but they're doing the job for the community. I don't know any councillor that says, I'm doing this for the money. I don't know any councillors, I'm sure there have been some councillors in the past over various councils across the state that have done things for the wrong reasons, but in our council, the councillors are doing it because they are community-minded people. They're doing things, in their opinion, that's the best thing for the community. Yeah. So you can help them with that by actually giving them some good feedback. Send them an email, pick up the phone, ring them, send them a text message. Getting on social media and giving it to them is probably not going to help with the decision-making process.
Well, what do they talk about? Stephen Covey talks about one of the great 7 principles of highly effective people is to seek first to understand and then to be understood. And right. I love that, and I think it's a really important one. So I think the moral of the story is that if you've got an opinion on this, I'm sure a lot of us have, is to, bring it forward, to talk to your councillors, and to put them forward in a respectful way, and because the decision is going to be made next week. Alrighty. Speaking of exactly, that's a nice little segue. Managed to sort of pump myself in for that one. Well done, Mark. Good job. Upcoming council meeting, because it's a big one from the point of view of not probably quite as big as the last one. The last one was about the budget, and we had the sale yards, all that sort of things. Last one, I don't think you're putting this one into the theatre for this one. I think we're back into the normal sort of spot for this one. But, of course, one of the big things that's going to be happening is in regards to making an announcement in regards to the celebration days or the days of recognition for Australia Day. What else is coming up?
Well, a few things in there, and I'd encourage people to download the business papers. I won't go through all the different things in there because there's some things that people will be very interested in and some things that people aren't so interested in. But certainly the papers are available not long after this podcast. They're typically available on the Monday. Download them, have a look. But the most important thing here is the council meeting. Have a look, engage, watch your councillors. This is the second last council meeting of this term of council.
Yeah.
So we're getting close to the end. The last one will be on the 15th of August. So a short time frame between this council meeting and the 15th of August one, because caretaker mode starts on the 16th. There's not a lot of point having a council meeting. I did speak to some councillors the other day, actually, some councillors that were talking about some of their last council meeting dates, and they were after the 16th of August. And I said, well, I don't understand why you would do that. There's nothing stopping it legally, but you're in caretaker mode, so you can't make big decisions. You can't make contentious decisions. You can't put binding policy in place for a new council. So you're kind of hamstrung a bit. So I didn't understand why, but anyway, you can do it. That's fine. So that'll be the last one, the 15th of August. So this is the second last one. And every council meeting has big decisions because you're impacting people's lives. I know during the sale yard debate, someone said, oh, this is a really big council meeting. It's really important for the sale yards operators. Well, that was important for them.
So too was the $250 million budget too you had to pass as well, wasn't it?
Well, $180 million, but yeah, that's right. That
gave an extra $70 million there.
That's right. that impacted people's lives. But every council meeting, I would argue, is important to some people because you're impacting some individuals with each of those various decisions you're making. Because every time you put your hand up as a councillor, every time you make a decision, you're having an impact on someone's life.
Someone's affected.
Yeah, so I think councillors take that responsibility very seriously. But please come along. Yes, it won't be as big as the last one, unfortunately.
Back in the council chambers?
Back in the council chamber. So
5:30?
5:30 on Thursday, the 25th of July.
Yep.
And tune in remotely, which most people do. I love to see people in the audience, but I know that people, especially when it's cold at the moment, would love to stay home in the warmth of their home rather than come down. It's warm in the chamber, but you've got to get out of your car and come in.
Oh, the discussion will be warm as well.
Very warm.
All right. Well, we've got through another one there. Matt, another big one worked our way through there today. There's a lot of good discussion. I really enjoyed a lot of those discussions there today. But, of course, we head towards the end of our podcast, and we always finish with the Limerick of the Week. So...
pumping my weights up, isn't it? Calling it the Limerick of the Week.
I love it. You know, it's like, and now it's time to announce the number one song. Here it is.
That's right. Of all the limericks written across the world this week,
that's right.
This is the Limerick of the week.
This is the Limerick. This is the chosen one.
With a fairly narrow limit of entrants in the Limerick of the week.
Okay, right.
Being mayors of Dubbo Regional Council. So of all the limericks that I've written
that's
this
right,
week,
exactly.
this is my number one. Because I do have to write a few to get to the one that, well, I don't know if I write a few, I play around with a few until I get to the final one.
Yes.
But this week, the Training Academy, I think the significance of the Rural Fire Service Training Academy, in fact, that whole precinct is significant for Dubbo. So I thought as I looked through what was happening this week, it was too easy to go to the res and $70 million. Yeah, whatever.
That's right.
That was too easy. So I thought the Training
I
Academy.
gave you $70 million in the budget as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's where you
2
got
minutes
the 70.
ago. So that's that easy to give away.
That's right. Pretty sharp, that $70 million. Just can we add that on?
That's
to
right.
budget?
Absolutely.
Rightio. So enough. We've talked about it that much. People are expecting way more than maybe we'll deliver. So Limerick of the Week goes like this. From districts both distant and near, to Dubbo they come without fear. At the training grounds core they prepare for the roar of the fires they'll conquer each year.
Oh, well done. As per usual, mates, you managed to sort of smack another one straight out of the park. You've done well. All right, folks, that wraps up again for Straight from the Mayor's Mouth. Until next week, take care.
Straight from the Mayor's Mouth with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.